Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. And our show is the first in our new Financial Fierceness series. And the idea here is that we have set this concept, and of course we're always asking, how can we surpass our goals? What is holding us back from surpassing our goals? And so much of what we talk about professionally in terms of our career, in terms of our overall contentment with our lives, comes back to these financial issues. And so when we come up with a series where we're going to just put a little bit of a spotlight on the financial aspect of surpassing our goals, I love the concept of fierceness. So much of what I do with language, it certainly reflects my own concepts about being assertive, about feeling that you have some control in over the outcomes in your life. Now, obviously, not total control. In some instances, a minuscule amount of control. But I try to focus on that because it's the only thing that I think gives us a little bit of room to explore possibilities and to be optimistic. Because there's so many things in life that happen that are totally beyond our control. And if we don't have some other way to, even a small way, counterbalance that, it can become overwhelming. It really can. So when we look at this concept, of course, financial, we're talking about money, and we're looking at the idea of being fierce about it. We're fierce about our financial issues. We're not passive. We're not waiting. We're not despondent. We don't give up. We are fierce, and we're going to get the information, and we're going to get the resources, and then we're going to get out there, and we're going to do something to try to help us reach and surpass our goals. So welcome to Financial Fierceness. Our topic today for this episode is credit score. Who cares? You should. Here's why. So our concept is the credit score. And this idea is, in the topic, that a lot of people that I've interacted with over the years argue, I don't care. I don't care about some stupid credit score that whoever has about me. I'm not defined by that, and I don't even care about it. I'm just going to do what I do. I want to make a couple of points, and then let's explore at whether or not that's an argument that's going to give us the best possible probability, meaning more likely than not, that we will meet and surpass our goals. So here we are, looking at this idea of a credit score. And big picture, in life, there are some people who are completely self-sufficient, meaning they have the resources financially where they never, ever have to ask or request another entity. An entity could be a person, right? Or it could be a business. They never have to request another entity for any assistance financially. They have their own resources. They want a new car, they go into their safe, or they go into their bank account, they get their money out, and they go get their car. Done. You're not applying for a car note. You're not trying to get a car loan. You're not going to a dealership to see if they'll, quote, approve you. You don't need that. All you have to do is decide what you want, which is sometimes, difficult because there's so many choices. And then you just go into your own, again, save for resources, and you pull out your own money, and you go buy whatever you want. Problem solved. So I'm not worried about a credit score. If that person wants to get a new home, and again, they sort of look around, they decide, do I like this? Do I not like that? Ooh, I don't really feel this floor plan. Once they decide what they want, again, they don't ask anybody. They don't go to a bank and ask a bank, oh, can I apply for a mortgage? No! They go again into their safe, or they go into their bank accounts, or they go, online into some of their maybe offshore accounts and see what they need to do to move some money. And then once they move their money, they maybe wire it to the person or the entity that's selling the property, right? And it's done. So there's no credit score. Who cares? Let's say that they want to they're worried about, oh my goodness, what if somebody hits me? What if I'm driving my car and I'm in a car accident? Somebody else, who's a horrible driver, just runs into me. Now, many of us would think, oh, I need insurance, right? Like I go and I pay insurance, and then I'm in a car accident. The insurance company will step in and I'll pay some money out of pocket, the deductible, right? And then the insurance company will come and pay for the rest of it, pay for the repairs. If they need to take action legally against the person who hit me, the insurance company has their own lawyers, and they'll take care of that. So if I don't need insurance, right, I have my own resources. Somebody's run into me. Oh, my goodness. I don't have an insurance company I call. No. I go back to my save or to my online accounts, and I move my money around, and I pay to fix my car. And if I want to sue the entity that hit me and ruin my day, then I'll just hire my own in-house lawyers, and they'll do it. Again, I don't need insurance in my own mind, and I don't then need people to check my, quote, credit score. So those are the examples. There are people in the world who are in that situation where, honestly, the whole concept of the episode, credit score, who cares? They would respond, I don't, because I have the money. I don't care about this at all. And in fact, sometimes if you look in the media, there are public accounts of people who are typically born into really wealthy families. So it's not something where they themselves invested to kind of earn all the money, but they just sort of were born, the money's there. And often you'll read about, they'll just, these stories where they go and they, don't pay a bill, and they don't, they seem to sort of maybe not be financially responsible. But their argument is, they don't need to be. Who cares? Right? They have the money. Everybody knows their family has the money. And if something goes wrong, or there's some kind of a bill or some kind of a problem, then people just pay for it. And even if they have a very low credit score, right, because they don't pay their bills on time, because they just aren't really interested in it, then it still doesn't impact them. So a bank doesn't want to loan them money. They don't care. They'll just go to their own safe or to their own online accounts and get the money. They already have the money, right? Okay, so this clarifies that for some people, this episode topic, it's not applicable. If you have your own resources, then you don't care about a credit score. Now, there are some people who just are so removed from sort of the larger society in a lot of ways that they also don't care, right? There are some people who live kind of off the grid. So they're not applying for, a utility account with their local electric company. They don't have utilities. They create their own utilities, and they live on their own land, and they don't, spend money. So they don't really care about it either. Again, these are people who have their own resources, whether they're very wealthy or have a lot of independently wealthy resources, or they're just sort of off the grid in society and they don't really care about this stuff, and they're not part of these interactions. They don't need to go worry about, again, getting local utilities, getting insurance. They don't have it, but they don't worry because they're not either, maybe they don't drive, or maybe they're in a situation where they feel like, so what? So again, there are people that I want to clarify. I'm always looking to try to be, as much as I can in these short episodes, aware of some of the larger scope of the issues. Okay, so setting aside the people who literally don't have any need for ever, literally needing someone else to approve something, right? So a loan for a car, a mortgage for a home, insurance. If you don't need that, then we've already set that aside and acknowledged that you don't care about your credit score. Let's talk about everybody else. Now, part of being in our financial fierceness series is that we have to be pragmatic. And finances are one of those areas where I think there's a lot of self-deception, and even sometimes I believe maybe a little self-delusion. And what we're referring to there is this whole concept of we can lie to ourselves, and we all do it at some point, right? Whether it's a little lie, like, oh, I'm not really late. Yeah, I was. Or it's a bigger lie, which might be, I don't really care. My finances are fine. Okay. Let's start with the super awesome part about the credit score. The super awesome part about the credit score is it's one of those few times in life where the entire total experience really actually is all about you. Let's just let that sit in. Let's just let that sink in, because it feels, I think, in some ways so good, right? This is all about you. Oh, yes, it is. This is literally something that is created and applies only to you, specifically you. Of all the people on the planet, you have your own specific credit report and credit score. And this is all about you. So this is it. Nobody's going to tell you that you have to share the attention and that, it's not about you. This is all about you. And that, to be really honest, how many times in life is it all about us? I mean, that's kind of nice, really, if you think about it. That's sort of a positive approach. On the bigger picture, let's try to break it down. So I'm in life. We've already decided I'm not one of the groups that doesn't need financial resources from other entities. So I am going to need it. I need insurance. I might need a loan, things of that nature. Okay, so here I am in life. I'm going about my life. And I'm born. I'm growing up. I'm not worried about my credit score because as a minor in the U.S. under 18, I don't have the ability legally to do anything. Legally, I'm a minor. I can't, sign enforceable contracts typically. I don't have the ability to enter into anything, right? I'm just a minor. So there's some adult somewhere that has to be legally responsible for me, and if there's no adult that's able to do it, then the government will step in for people who are in foster care. So here we are. Now I'm 18, and all of a sudden, I'm able to go out into the world and enter into arrangements or contracts with other entities. And often when we are independent, we need a place to live. When you get a place to live, typically you're going to need things inside of it. And by things, I mean issues like utilities. Most of us want, and I would argue, need to some extent, the ability to water, electricity or natural gas so that we can have either, heating or cooling, so that we can have outlets that are live so that we can plug things in, like a lamp or a computer, things of that nature. And all of this stuff, typically there's going to be this idea about credit. Big picture, here's my big, oversimplified big picture. So we're moving along as humans. And it used to be a long time ago that we were sort of born in an area, grew up in that area, and then mostly lived, that my whole life in that one area, and then I died there. And most of the time, because people didn't move around that much, then people kind of knew. They knew each other. You got a reputation, right? And part of the reason people didn't travel, a long time ago is they didn't have the technology to, right? Before airplanes, it took forever, to get places on little boats, and the boats were either manually powered or by wind, and so there's just not a lot of transportation because it's so rare and it's so hard and it's so time consuming. So before automobiles, before trains, before airplanes, people sort of didn't move around as much geographically because it was difficult. All right. So then the perception sort of was if you're in that community and you're doing business, and we know, back in biblical times and before that, we can read, fascinating, what humans were doing at the time. People did, have businesses, right? And they did have accounts. And there was this whole concept of okay, did you pay what you owe? But because people had more, they had more knowledge about some individual, and it was a smaller community typically, then their low population numbers, people didn't move, people sort of knew, oh, okay, well, that person over there doesn't really pay their bills, so I'm not going to loan them any money. And people kind of had that, insight. So they could kind of decide, is it a good idea for me to give this person, my property or my money? And if I want it back, will they pay me back? And even Shakespeare, right, wrote about, and this whole idea, neither a borrower nor a lender be. And the whole idea is that, hey, is this somebody that I need to give my money to? Am I going to get it back, or my stuff? Okay. All right, fast forward. Modern times, our population, of course, has exploded. When you look at the numbers on the same planet of what the amount of people we've stuffed into it now, in the projected population growth, it's really amazing. Okay, so there's more people, and people move around more. So I don't really know now if I should loan somebody some of my property or my money and get it back because I don't know you, right? Like I have no idea who you are. Okay, so big picture, how do you come up with a system then? Because when you loan somebody something and you want it back, then it becomes potentially a stressful situation, and you don't know if it's a stranger if they're gonna give it back to you, and how then do you handle that? Now, I argue that if you are dealing with a person and it's in your personal life, like it's a family member, a close personal friend, then you need to not make any loans ever. I think I'm pretty sure we have scheduled. I'm going to do a show on this because it comes up all the time in the legal system. And just in personal relationships, people get freaked out over this. And sort of the staple of the sort of entertainment shows about the legal system and small claims court, like a Judge Judy or some of these shows. It always comes down to, frequently that somebody owes somebody money and they're mad about it, that they didn't pay them back. Okay, to fix that, then don't ever make a loan. Then if somebody is like, oh, I need money, I can't pay my rent right now, or I'm behind on this payment, or they turned off my utilities, or they're going to turn them off if I don't get some money. If you have a personal relationship and you want to help somebody out, help them out. Give it to them. Just give it to them. And that way it's never talked about again. It's not an issue, and you can move forward with a happy, healthy relationship. If you do not have to give it to them and not need it back, do not give it to them. You're going to have to say, honestly, I can't do it right now, and then leave it alone. But don't, quote, make a loan and then flip out because later when they told you I'll pay you back next month, or I'll pay you back on my payday, or I'll pay you back when I get my taxes, and then they don't, and then you're just mad and you can't believe they did this to you, and it becomes like this big thing. Just don't loan it. If you don't have it really seriously, then don't give it. If you have it and you want to give it, give it. Don't loan it. Okay, problem solved. We fixed that. Now we're back to this idea of strangers, right? Like I feel like I want car insurance because I don't want to have to go in my own pocket and pay all of the costs if somebody, creates a damage that ruins, my property or makes it have to get repaired. And so I want car insurance. I know that the people are going to want to figure out, am I going to pay, right? Because here's the thing. They'll give you the insurance. Then you have to pay for it. And most of the time people pay monthly because it's cheaper, right? You could just pay up front. Instead of paying, whatever, $40 a month or whatever it is, you could just pay the whole, 6-month policy up front. But most people don't either have that money in that big amount like that, or they don't want to, so they say, I'll pay it out. When you agree to pay something out, then basically you're borrowing money from somebody. It's credit, right? Because technically they gave you the insurance policy at the time, right? Like, okay, you signed up for it, you have our first payment, boom, you're insured. But when you stop paying, then they have to take the policy away. And it becomes this whole, difficult situation. So people want to understand with strangers, is there a risk that I'm not going to get my stuff back? If so, how high is the risk, right? And again, this actually ties into a lot of what we talk about in all of our programs, this idea, right, about probability. And I often will underscore again, anything is possible. Anything is possible. That's the whole concept of possibility. But it's not probable. That means, is it likely, right? So it's possible later today I could become, Miss Universe and also be, selected for the Olympics. It's possible. Anything's possible. Is it probable? Meaning, is it likely? It's not very likely as I older than most beauty queen requirements at this point. And I also I am not athletically talented at really anything that I'm aware of. So those things make it less likely that I would be part of the Olympic team. But it's possible, right? Anything's possible. Okay. So it's the same thing with people that are going to loan you stuff. They want to have an idea of how likely it is. Is it really likely that you're going to pay them back, right? You're pretty safe. Is it kind of likely, or is it not very likely at all? Now, within that understanding, anything can happen. You could have somebody who has a really great reputation for paying their bills, and then something happens and they don't pay you. These aren't guarantees. They're just more likely than not. It's sort of like, if I go and I get someone who's going to be a surgeon for my operation. If I get the surgeon who went to, the highest, ranked program in the field, has the most amount of training, has done the most amount of successful procedures, has the lowest amount of negative, outcomes, then it's more likely that I might get a good outcome versus the person who maybe didn't have as much training or qualifications or experience. Now, I can still go to the, quote, best and get a bad outcome. Everybody knows that. I'm just trying to find a way to gauge probability to try to lower the likelihood of the worst outcome. None of this is a guarantee because life always throws in. I could have gotten the best surgeon in the universe, but that morning he had horrible news, that his love of his life dumped him, and he got horribly depressed, And so when he comes in for my operation, unfortunately for me, bad timing, things just went, wrong. He was out of it. He wasn't focused. He was, emotionally not able to do his best, and, there was something bad happened. But that's just life, okay? Okay. All that's to say this. I'm trying to make the argument that some people just bristle and they get very offended at the idea that someone else is going to make a determination about what they're likely to do. Okay, I get it. We all get it. Because all of these projections and probabilities are just that. It's just what is more likely to happen. It doesn't mean it's a guarantee. And again, I could be someone who has a horrible past for paying my bills, but I, for some reason, woke up, today and decided I'm going to start paying all my bills. And from then on out, I'm great. And it goes the other way, too. We already mentioned that. Somebody could have a wonderful reputation. They always pay their bills, and then all of a sudden they just stop. So, you can't control that part of it, but what you're trying to do is, to the best of your ability, prediction. And there is a body of research that supports that some of this does result in better outcomes. Meaning, if I get some data or information about what somebody is likely to do based on what they've done in the past, I am going to have some increased probability or likelihood that I'll be able to predict their current and future behavior. And we see this in finances, and I'm just going to add, we see it in lots of things in life, right? We see it in our educational system as a student and as a faculty member. I've seen this. A lot of the time you get somebody and it's sort of your student who tends to be the overachiever tends to be the overachiever all the time, and the student who's not really, that focused tends to not be that focused all the time. Now you see mixes, right? You see somebody who most of the time they're an overachiever, and then sometimes it's a disaster on some specific issue. But in general, people tend to follow patterns in behavior. That's a whole different issue to explore. But setting aside why that happens and whether or not it's appropriate or ethical to assess that, let's just table that, and for the purposes of this analysis or discussion, share that, okay, there's some increased likelihood that I'll get a better predictor based on data if I kind of understand what somebody's done in the past and what they're doing now. And I even, you even see this in personal relationships, right? You see it where somebody, starts a relationship with someone and other people say, oh my goodness, that person has for their last 5 relationships with somebody that they claim they love, they've done, not nice things and not saying that they will treat you like that, but they have a history. People do this all the time, just in our social lives. And it's not that we're saying that you're doomed to repeat your patterns, but we're just aware as humans that, hey, if somebody has a pattern of doing this, it's likely, unless they really want to change and create new choices and new outcomes, that it's likely that they're going to continue with that behavior. That's not, anything unusual. We do that in social lives, and we certainly do it in our business. So here we are. Who cares? This episode is the first of a two-parter, and I really wanted to use this first part to sort of lay the predicate for that for some people the credit score doesn't matter. We did that. Also to explore the idea of sort of, big picture, what is it, why did this come about? In our second episode, what we're going to do is delve into what is a credit report versus what is a credit score. Those are kind of two different things. Actually, they totally are. And we're going to also delve into who's doing this. Like, who makes this credit score about me? Because we talked about how it's kind of super awesome that it's just about us. But who makes it? And how do they do this? Like, where are they getting this information about, allegedly, what I do with my finances? Also, how do I use this thing, and how do I get it? And if I get it, what does it mean, right? Like, what's the good score, quote unquote? What's the bad score? What can I do with it? So we're going to delve into some of the nuts and bolts of that in our second episode. But I really want to encourage those of you that are still sort of like, I don't care. In the second episode, I'm going to move through some of the questions I just mentioned, right? Like, who does this? Where does it come from? What do I do about it? How do I use it? What does it mean? All that kind of good stuff. And this, the sort of introductory overview episode, I want to underscore a couple of things. The topic of this episode is, who cares? Right? Credit score, who cares? You should. Here's why. Here's why. This thing called the credit score, which in the U.S. is a 3-digit number. All right, and I'll explain in detail, but I'm referring to the historical, most commonly used credit score. And the credit score in the U.S., that's the historical, most commonly used credit score, is a 3-digit number, okay? And it's going to be from a low of 300, which is the lowest, that's the bottom, that is not good, okay, to the highest score of 850. So the number is going to be somewhere between 300 and 850. You have one of these if you have had any interaction into the larger society at large. Okay, so you rented something, an apartment or a car, you have a credit card, you applied for a loan, anything like that, okay? Insurance, okay, you're going to have a credit score. Somewhere between 300 is the lowest, meaning that you have a very high risk that you're not going to pay your bill. And 850 is the highest, meaning that you're the highest possible likelihood that you will pay people back. Okay, in that range, okay, most of us are going to be in the middle. That makes sense. Now, in the second part of the series, I'll talk a little bit about some of the cutoff and sort of how this works. But in general, let's look at it like this. Okay, so let's say that I want to go get a new car or just a newer car. All right, so I'm going to go and I'm going to get a car, but I don't have the money in my safe or my bank account to pay cash, or if I do, it's going to wipe out everything I have. So I'm going to go and I'm going to borrow some money from a lender to pay for the car, either all of it or part of it. Okay, so I go to this lender who does not know me personally, has no clue who I am and whether or not I'm a good risk financially. So what they do is they say something like, all right, we're going to run your credit, and they make you sign some paperwork where you agree to allow them to, quote, run your credit. We'll talk about in the second episode what that means and what they're actually doing. At the end of this process, though, they're going to get this number, and it's going to be somewhere between 300 and 850, right? When they get this number, in all fairness, they're actually going to get a couple of different numbers, but they'll usually pick the middle number. So let's say they're going to get 3 different credit scores from me. All right, I'll explain the second episode from where. But they'll get 3 different credit scores. One says that my credit is 700. The other one says my credit is 680. And the other one says my credit is 670. The middle number is 680, right? So the numbers are between 300 and 850. With my 680 credit score, they're going to also have a chart that's going to say whether I'm going to be approved based on just this number and how much I'm going to have to pay in terms of the borrowing factor, what the interest rate is, right? The credit score is the whole difference in your life between you going to somebody for something that you want financially and then saying, yes, how can I help you? And giving you an awesome interest rate. The better your credit score is, the cheaper it is for you to borrow money because people feel based on your number, you're going to pay them back. There's a really high likelihood. So high credit score means that it's easy to get things. When you want something, oh, I want that credit card, I want that car, I want that mortgage, I want that insurance. People say yes to you based on this number. And even on top of the fact they say yes to you, which is always nice, they also are going to make it really cheap and easy for you to get. They're going to give you the lowest rate. Preferential, they'll call that sometimes. You literally can borrow it for the cheapest rate. So it might be the difference between paying $150 for something or $450 for something because the interest rate spreads will be so different. It's a big deal, and it's everything for people who need access to market and finances. So I hope that you come to episode 2 and we talk a little bit more about this. But I believe and argue that for most of us, the credit score is a big, big deal. Thank you so much, and always come to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information. Thanks.